Welcome to BHS 2520, Leadership Principles of Development. My name is Peter Wolf, and I'll be guiding you through this online class. To begin, I want to give you some introduction about myself and to the class, and tell you a bit about where we're headed and what's expected. So first, I've taught this class for several years, and I just recently spent several months updating and modifying the class. I think the updated version is much better than the old version, but I'm open to feedback, so please feel free to give me your thoughts about your experience as we go through the class. My interest in the topic of leadership began when I was in college. Prior to college, I don't think I gave much thought to leadership. I think in my mind there were leaders and there were followers, and I certainly was not a leader. I'm naturally introverted, and I was pretty shy in high school. As I said, that changed when I was in college. I attended Grace, and during my time as a student became very involved with student leadership. But I think I still associate leadership with extroverted, outgoing, popular, take charge kind of people. However, I had two mentors who loved talking about leadership as a skill and as a behavior and as a mindset. They began to introduce me to different theories and books and authors and ideas on leadership. And I began to study the concept of leadership for myself and realized that leadership wasn't some mystical gift that some had and others did not. It was actually a set of choices. It wasn't just about what I did, it was also about who I was. I could connect with my passions and my gifts and my skills in leadership, even if those were not the passions, gifts, and skills of someone that I might consider to be a natural leader. When I graduated college, I taught high school social studies in a small Christian school, which allowed me the freedom to develop my own elective class. So I put together a class on leadership. I really didn't like most things about teaching high school, but I did find that I loved teaching certain classes, and leadership was one of those classes. The final project for the students was for them to put on their own leadership conference for area high school students. It was a fantastic experience, and they did a great job with it. When I began my master's program, I wanted to learn about mentoring, discipleship, and leadership. So I completed an MA in spiritual formation and leadership. I think taking classes in spiritual formation and leadership in the same program really solidified for me the idea that good leadership comes from the soul of a person. It isn't just about a person's skills. It's truly about their character and who they are on the inside. That what a person believes matters to how they will live and lead. So after a few years of teaching, I went back to Grace and began working in the student affairs field. First, supervising residence halls, and then working as an associate dean. I was highly involved with student leadership training, and for 5 years taught a class that was a prerequisite for campus leaders. Some of that material that we developed for that class will be shared in this course. In that time, I developed other courses on leadership, specifically for the Masters in Higher Ed program that they have, and generally had a role in mentoring staff in their leadership with students. My time at Grace introduced me to a lot of different ideas about leadership. Unfortunately, some of them are outside the scope of this class, but are in the textbook, like organizational leadership or team-based leadership. I've since left my role as Associate Dean at Grace in order to return to school, this time in the field of pastoral counseling. I've realized that my personal desire is to lead individuals towards wholeness and holiness through individual or group mentoring or counseling. I know that I'll continue to read about, study, and practice leadership in the various areas of my life, and I'm thrilled that I can continue to teach this course. All of that to say, I think leadership is an important topic, and I've dedicated quite a bit of time to the study and practice of leadership. I am by no means an expert, and I look forward to us learning about leadership together. But I love being able to teach this class, and I'm really glad you're part of it. As I think about leadership, and the multiple approaches that one could take to lead, and to study leadership, I think it'd be a good idea for me to share some of my thoughts concerning the way we lead and the way we study leadership before our class even begins. First of all, within this class, and anytime you're studying anything, it's important to have a common definition. Definitions tend to restrict. They say what something is and also what it isn't. Descriptions tend to expand. They open up to how something could be. In this class, we have to both define and describe leadership. To be honest, I've never had a really great definition of leadership. In all the books I've read and all the authors I've read and the speakers I've heard, I've never really come away with a great, this is it, this is my definition of leadership. Your textbook is going to help you understand why. So for the sake of this class, we'll just go with the textbook's definition. But I do want to offer some thoughts and some critiques about it. Peter Northouse, the author of this textbook, defines leadership as a process whereby an individual influences a group of individuals to achieve a common goal. Not a bad definition. I do appreciate how the author breaks it down and explains why he chose the words he did, but I've got some thoughts about that. First, for the purposes of this class, leadership can also be with individuals. It's not just with groups. I don't think it's just about one person getting a group of people to do something. I think mentoring is a form of leadership, discipleship is a form of leadership, so for our purposes, we're not going to be limited to just groups. Secondly, once you read the first chapter, you'll understand, but again, for our purposes, leadership and management are pretty much the same thing. We're not going to get into the nuanced differences between the two. I think there is a difference, but if you're really interested to know about that difference, read a book called The One Thing You Need to Know by Marcus Buckingham. Other than that, not important for this class. Third, the first chapter talks about types of power. Power can take many forms, and positional power, the power that you get simply from having a title, isn't always bad, though often our generation tends to prefer personal power, the relational power that we have with other individuals. So we're going to talk about types of power in this class. Not all power is bad. Fourth, some of the approaches to leadership that we're going to talk about will be clearly in line with biblical values and a biblical worldview. It may not be obvious with some of the others. Some of you may wonder why we don't explicitly cover spiritual leadership in this class. Well, mostly because it's outside the scope of this class. There's so much we could talk about. But I will also say that if you're a Christ follower and the Holy Spirit lives in you, then everything you do could be considered worship and therefore spiritual. We're not necessarily going to look at biblical examples of leadership in this class, but I want us to always examine these approaches with a biblical worldview. That requires critical thinking and a willingness to set aside some of our preconceived notions about what leadership is and isn't. Leadership is complex and it's multidimensional. This will be quickly evident as we look at all the different theories. In the first week, you're going to need to read a handout called Leadership Theories, Models, and Approaches. This is a brief overview of all the theories, models, and approaches that we're going to be looking at in this class. The first lecture, video lecture, is going to talk more about the multidimensional nature of leadership. As I just said, we're going to take a look at many different leadership theories. Theories are kind of complex. They're both descriptive and prescriptive. By descriptive, I mean that some theories explain how and why things actually are. By prescriptive, I mean that some theories explain how things should be. They prescribe a course of action. In this class, we're going to take a look at both types of theories. I think it's helpful to understand that some leadership theories are really more prescriptive. They say how it should or could be rather than how things always are. Now, most of these theories that we're going to look at are actually interrelated with each other, but in order to be really understood, you sort of have to isolate them to understand them. In some senses, all of the theories are right sometimes, or all of the time, or at different times, but that's confusing to think about. So instead, we isolate them one at a time and focus on them when they're most descriptive and most observable of what's actually taking place. One way I've started to think about theories is that they can act as lenses. If you wear glasses or bifocals or transition lenses or something like that, then you're familiar with the idea that when looking through a lens, some things are going to be sharp and in focus and other things are going to be a little bit blurry. Some lenses magnify. Some lenses, like sunglasses, might cause things to have a certain distortion or color to them. And leadership theories are kind of like that. They bring certain things into theory or into focus and really magnify those aspects of leadership, and they blur or diminish other aspects of leadership. We all have a lens through which we're looking at leadership. We just may or may not be aware of it. And one of the purposes of this class is to help you be aware of what lens are you using when you look at leadership, when you think about leadership. What do you tend to magnify and what do you tend to diminish? As we look through these different theories and models, think about that. Leadership is hard to measure, which is why we rely on a set of behaviors. But theories disagree as to which set of behaviors. Most of the class we're going to be looking at behavioral theories, but please remember what I said earlier. Leadership isn't only about what you do. It's also about who you are. But it's also not just about who you are. It's also about what you do. You have to be able to bring both of those things together. And leadership is both an art and a science. Art requires practice and reflection, and hopefully in this class we'll get to do both. There is one assignment that is not part of the weekly rhythm of this course. By the end of the 8 weeks, I want you to choose one of the following options. These options may not really seem like they fit in a class about leadership, but the more I've watched leaders, studied leaders, and examined my own life, the more I realize the necessity of both of these disciplines. The first option is this: take 4 hours and be alone with God. You can have a Bible and a journal if you must, but this isn't meant to be 4 hours of Bible study. This is meant to be 4 hours of quiet solitude, when you disconnect from everything that screams for your attention. No computer, no phone, no music, no electronics of any kind, just you and God for 4 hours straight. And don't use the excuse that your Bible is on your phone. Find a real, actual paper Bible. Otherwise, you're just going to be distracted. I recently heard about a study where college students were asked to sit still for 15 minutes. They couldn't do anything during that time, and they were told to move as little as possible. The following day, they were invited back and given the option of either sitting for 15 minutes or receiving a mild electrical shock. Most people chose to get shocked. Sitting still for 15 minutes is apparently more painful. Now, your second choice is a little bit better than getting shocked. Your second option is to choose a book that is at least 120 pages long and read it over the course of the 8 weeks. This book is to be about anything that is personally or spiritually enriching to you. I don't care what it is. It could be a book about a subject that you find fascinating but never have time to read about. It could be a book that everybody keeps talking about but you haven't made time to read yet. It could be fiction or not fiction, but it has to be something that can help you grow as a person. At the end of the session, all you have to do is tell me whether or not you did either one of those two things. No paper, no summary, no evaluation, it's all or nothing. And if you choose to skip it altogether, it's only 5% of your final grade. Under where the syllabus is posted, there is a discussion forum called Introductions. First, write a paragraph or two telling us about yourself. Second, let me know what, if any, questions about the syllabus you may have. If you have no questions, please let me know that you've read the syllabus, understand it, and have no questions. If you feel like your question's pretty specific, like you're going to be gone for a portion of the next 8 weeks, send me an email. I promise to get back to you as soon as I can. I check my email all the time, but if you're working at 3 a.m., don't expect a quick response. Otherwise, I'll see what I can do. Alright, those are my introductory thoughts, vague and rambling as they may be. I look forward to learning more about leadership with you as we go through this class together. If you have any questions, please feel free to let me know, and I'll see you on the discussion boards.